That crucial instant, which was meant to annihilate my spirit, instead armed me with the most profoundly gratifying exit I could have engineered. I am Elias Vance, 33 years old, and I reside in Austin, Texas. The incident occurred about 4 months ago, starting on a Monday that felt identical to countless others. It was a typical corporate scene. Lukewarm coffee, harsh fluorescent glare, and the frantic staccato of finger-tapping on keyboards. Diana Sterling, my supervising director at Velocity Systems, stood near the entrance, exhibiting that familiar, cutting sneer she adopted whenever she prepared to make a public example of someone. "Vance!" she called out, gesturing sharply for me to approach. Her voice projected across the open floor plan, forcing every employee to turn their attention toward us. I understood immediately what this performance was about: the mandatory performance review and data audit. I had sacrificed the last 2 weekends to painstakingly gather records of every client interaction over the past year: call summaries, email threads, and those crucial personal notes. It was a 58-page document, a meticulous justification proving that my client-centered philosophy worked. I didn't just service accounts. I cultivated and retained them. That was the sole reason our division was still securing renewals, while other teams were hemorrhaging contracts. Diana, however, had zero regard for qualitative success. In her rigid view, I was sluggish and inefficient. She demanded I conform to behavioral model of a metrics automaton, unlike the employee who remembered that the head of the San Diego account had a newborn, or that the Chicago team lead refused calls after 4 p.m. I approached her workstation, where my compiled audit was displayed prominently on her main monitor. She didn't spare me a glance as she announced, "This is fundamentally irrelevant data that is simply bloating our infrastructure." With one sharp theatrical click, she selected the entire 58-page file from the company's shared network and hit the delete command. Poof, gone. The entire office seemed to hold its collective breath. 27 professionals froze, pretending to focus on their keyboards, but watching the unfolding drama nonetheless. My stomach dropped. All those grueling hours, my entire documented history of successful client engagement, vanished in less than 10 seconds. "You're welcome," she added with smug finality, as if she had just performed a corrective service. My mouth opened, but the shock held my voice captive. It wasn't immediate rage. It was sheer disbelief. That file was more than just documentation. It was the institutional memory for our accounts, the accumulated rapport, the foundational trust, the minor insights that convinced clients we valued them as partners, not just revenue streams. As if cued by fate, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I instinctively pulled it out, still reeling from the erasure. A new subject line illuminated the screen: employment proposal, Apex Group. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. It stipulated a base compensation of $470,000, a 3% equity stake in their technology startup, and a handwritten postscript that read, "We have tracked your client retention success for months and want you to head our strategic division immediately." 30 seconds after Diana destroyed my records, I was holding my perfect escape route. I looked up at her. She was still lecturing, spouting nonsense about recalibrating professional tone and eliminating inefficiencies, but her words dissolved into background noise. All I could think was, "You just incinerated your soul's safeguard." She hadn't just deleted a file. She had destroyed the only quantifiable proof of my value. And without me, she had zero ground left to stand on. 18 months prior, I had joined Velocity Systems as a client integration lead. The title was dry, but the paycheck was sufficient to guarantee my tenure for at least a year. I should have recognized the danger signs earlier. My predecessor had quit after only 5 months, completely ghosting the department. No notice, no email, just total disappearance. On my first day, Diana Sterling, my immediate superior, greeted me with her customary performative smile. "Maintain a transactional perspective," she instructed, tapping a red pen against a pile of spreadsheets. "We cannot afford time for unnecessary pleasantries with clients. Simply log your activity, adhere to the standardized scripts, and prioritize efficiency above all." Her entire management philosophy was predicated on speed, short calls, rapid data entry, and minimal genuine human connection. Her goal was for our clients to view themselves as entries on a balance sheet. Initially, I complied. I was still recovering from a difficult layoff and couldn't risk losing another role. But within a few months, a critical pattern emerged that everyone else seemed to overlook. Clients were terminating contracts, renewals were stalling, and steady accounts were fading away. It wasn't subtle. It was a slow, systemic bleed, and yet no one in leadership was addressing the crisis. I couldn't shake the unsettling realization that something was fundamentally wrong. These weren't bad clients. They simply had no loyalty to us. Why would they? Every interaction with Velocity felt impersonal, mechanical, like interacting with a glorified CRM database. So, I quietly began to experiment. I didn't notify anyone, especially not Diana. I just started to genuinely care. I jot down small, personal details during calls. A client's upcoming vacation, a mention of a marathon they were training for, or even a preferred communication method. It was hardly revolutionary. I simply treated them as actual human beings instead of quarterly revenue projections. At first, it felt almost absurd, writing reminders like, follow up on spouse's new job, or ask about summer cabin repairs. But then the calls started changing. Clients began phoning in, not just replying to emails, but asking specifically for me. Some even bypassed the company mainline to use my direct extension. It was benign until Diana noticed. I clearly recall the day she walked past and saw my notes arrayed like a detective's evidence wall. She paused, narrowed her eyes, and demanded, "What is this nonsense? Birthdays? Family details? Elias, you are not operating a social registry." But I didn't stop, because within 4 months of adopting my relationship-first approach, client satisfaction scores spiked by 40%. We began signing extensions without even having to negotiate them. Clients were actively recommending their colleagues and associates, often saying, "Call Elias. He actually pays attention." The better our metrics looked, the more intense Diana's animosity toward me became. She never confronted me directly, but I sensed it in every management meeting. She desperately wanted to claim credit for the improved turnaround, but my methods directly contradicted her entire narrative of cold efficiency. And that, I quickly understood, was an imminent problem. The subtle glares began small, a raised eyebrow here, a dismissive sigh there, usually when I updated the team on my flourishing accounts. At first, I dismissed it as paranoia, convinced I was overthinking my unorthodox strategy. But when Diana, the high priestess of quantitative metrics, summoned me to her office that Tuesday morning, I knew the confrontation was real. Her office felt like an isolation chamber. Stark gray walls, sterile decor, and a framed certificate for some obscure management course. She sat behind her desk, her red pen drumming a rhythm on a stack of printed documents. Without glancing up, she asked, "Do you know why you're here?" I looked at the papers, my detailed call logs from the last quarter highlighted and annotated as if they documented a felony. "I'm guessing it's not a commendation," I replied wryly. She offered a brittle, sharp laugh. "Amusing. Why exactly are you dedicating 50 minutes to a 10-minute follow-up call?" She jabbed the pen at the page, highlighting the time logs as evidence of my systemic failure. "Are we running a charitable organization, Carter? We are a metrics-driven enterprise. Our success is measured by time management." I took a controlled breath, striving to remain composed. "Diana, do you know why our top-tier clients have all committed to another year, and why 3 of them generated new business for us last quarter?" I slid a prepared folder across her desk. "It's because I engaged with them. I understand their pain points. I know their objectives. And I remember the personal details that foster trust. This," I tapped my notes, "is the reason we are up over $180,000 in retained and new business." She gave my folder a cursory glance. "That is anecdotal," she dismissed. "We do not need personal records regarding a client's pet or family. We require efficiency." "Efficiency?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. We were losing contract for months because our clients felt they were interacting with a synthetic robot. This is not just about raw numbers. It's about forming partnerships. She rolled her eyes and leaned back. "I am not interested in your philosophical debate, Elias. What I am interested in is precision, which is why I'm assigning you a priority project. She pushed a new folder toward me. I want a complete audit of every single client interaction you've had this year. Every call, every email, every single touch point. I want to know exactly how you are allocating your time. I picked up the folder. It was transparently a punitive task, and we both knew it. So I'm to justify my continued employment? I asked flatly. If that is a perspective you choose to adopt, she responded with a smirk. I left her office feeling emotionally bruised, but I completed the audit. 58 pages, exhaustively detailed, demonstrating every interaction, every dollar generated, and a direct, measurable impact on retention. For a brief, naive moment, I thought the irrefutable data would finally win her over. I was catastrophically wrong. That audit became the very weapon she used to execute me publicly. The Monday morning team review was usually dull, but this one felt like a sanctioned execution. Diana stood front and center in the conference room, my 58-page audit projected onto the large wall screen for all 27 employees to witness. I had labored for weeks on that document, chronicling the connections, the subsequent referrals, and how it translated into over $180,000 in revenue for firm. This, she announced, holding a printed copy as if it were toxic waste, is a prime illustration of wasted personnel hours. I sat in the second row, my hands clasped, working hard to project apathy. My name was prominently featured on every page, yet she wasn't focusing on the results. She was targeting every personal anecdote I had logged, the very details that kept the clients loyal. Inquired about dog's recovery from surgery. She read aloud, her tone dripping with disbelief. We are not veterinary staff, Elias. A few nervous giggles rippled through the room, but most maintained a tense silence. Diana was just warming up. Here is another. Set note of congratulations for child's university graduation. Do you genuinely believe emotional labor is part of your professional scope? It's a key factor in why our clients remain, I murmured under my breath. She snapped her head toward me. Excuse me? I cleared my throat. It's the reason they renew, because they feel valued. She ignored my protest and advanced to the next slide. These calls, 50 minutes long when 10 would have sufficed. This is not customer service. This is self-indulgent unprofessionalism, and it is costing us valuable resources. My chest tightened. I wanted to fight, to scream that this was an indulgence. It was a critical element keeping our business functional. But Diana wasn't seeking dialogue. She was building a case, meticulously dismantling and ridiculing my life's work, line by line. Then came the definitive blow. This audit is merely cluttering our network storage, she stated with a dismissive wave. Extraneous data. Before I could possibly intervene, she positioned the cursor over the file, clicked delete, and it vanished. The subsequent silence was crushing. Everyone stared first at the blank screen, then at me, unsure whether to react or pretend the event hadn't just happened. Diana crossed her arms, radiating self-satisfaction. Now, she continued, let's discuss how we all plan to refine our professional approach. I barely processed anything she said next because, at that precise moment, my phone vibrated. An unfamiliar number. Normally, I would silence it during a meeting, but an impulse compelled me to answer. Elias Vance, a man's voice inquired. This is Ethan Cole from Apex Group. We have been intensely following your retention metrics. Would you be available to discuss leading our new strategy team? We are prepared to offer a base of $470,000, plus a significant equity stake. I froze completely. For a few heart-stopping seconds, I couldn't articulate a response. All I could hear was Diana's distant, monotonous voice in the background, lecturing on workflow resets, while this stranger offered me a transformative future. Could you transmit the final details via email? I finally managed, keeping my voice low. Check your inbox, he replied. The offer letter is already there. By the time I ended the call, a fully executed contract was waiting for me. Diana believed she had thoroughly embarrassed me. She failed to realize she had just gifted me the most perfect public opportunity to walk away. Diana was still pontificating when I returned to the conference room, droning on about resetting the corporate tone and standardizing procedures. Her voice carried the arrogant confidence of someone who thought she had successfully crushed me into submission. I waited until she concluded her latest sermon on efficiency. Then I stood up. "Actually, I have an immediate announcement of my own," I stated, ensuring my voice was audible to the entire room. Every head swiveled toward me, confusion replacing their apathy. Diana's brittle smile faltered. "Elias, this is not the time." "No, this is precisely the right time." I strode toward the front of the room, the contract from Apex Group displayed on my phone screen. Effective immediately, I announced, "I am resigning from Velocity Systems." A few people gasped. A whispered, "Wait, what?" traveled to the chairs. Diana blinked, visibly caught off guard. "You cannot simply terminate your employment during a review," she snapped, her tone defensive and sharp. "Oh, yes, I can," I countered, holding up my phone. "I just signed an offer to lead client strategy at Apex Group. The salary is double my current compensation at Velocity, plus a 3% equity position." The room fell into profound silence. I felt every eye fixed on me, their expressions a mix of shock and stunned admiration. I scrolled to the signature page and turned the phone toward them. "I am finished here. No ill will, but I will not remain for another lecture about how prioritizing human connection is unprofessional indulgence." Diana's face flushed the color of a bruised plum. "You cannot depart without utilizing proper HR protocol. We have processes." "Indeed," I replied, "and we also have a human resources clause regarding hostile work environments. You, Diana, have just fulfilled every single requirement for its activation. Therefore, I require no 2 weeks' notice. I am invoking the clause. Effective now, I am gone." Her mouth opened soundlessly. She glanced around the room, soliciting support, perhaps hoping someone would defend her position. No one did. Even Marcus Thorne, our CEO, who had been observing quietly at the far end of the table, remained perfectly still. Perhaps he realized it was wiser to let this train wreck play out than to step into the inferno Diana had created. I retrieved my notebook from the table and headed for the door. "Good luck to you all," I said, nodding to my former colleagues. "You will certainly require it." Diana tried one last desperate assertion of authority as I reached the exit. "This is highly unethical. Elias, you will regret this decision." I paused in the doorway and looked back at her. "No, Diana, what is unethical is erasing the very work that was keeping your account solvent. You just deleted your only safety net." I left the room to absolute silence. Not a single person moved to stop me. That was the instant I knew the universal exhaustion everyone felt toward her, even if they lacked the courage to vocalize it. My first 72 hours at Apex Group felt like stepping out of a tempest and into clean, open air. There were no tense morning stand-ups, no managers circling like predators awaiting an error. My new team genuinely sought my input. They hired me because of my methods, not in spite of them. For the first time in years, I wasn't struggling against the organizational current. I had barely settled into my new ergonomic chair when the first unexpected call arrived. It was Victor, the owner of a regional logistics company. He skipped all pleasantries. "I heard you abandoned ship, Elias," he said, his voice a mixture of relief and amusement. "Great move. I was literally minutes away from telling Velocity to lose my contact details." I laughed. "I suppose I timed my departure well." "Do you have a new firm where I can land my account?" he asked, the certainty already evident in his voice. "Yes," I confirmed, glancing at the Apex logo on my business card. "I do." That was just day 1. By day 3, I had received outreach from 5 separate legacy clients, all contacted me independently. They found me through my LinkedIn update, industry chatter, or, in one case, via Victor, who apparently served as my unofficial town crier. Constance, who managed a boutique manufacturing company, was the most direct. "I refuse to deal with whoever Diana assigned to us," she said. "That woman handled every call like a clinical interview. She didn't even grasp our core business model. How quickly could we transition to you?" I reminded her that I had initiated zero contact. I was determined not to be accused of poaching. The The truth was, I didn't need to lift a finger. My established relationships were infinitely stronger than the Velocity System's brand itself. My only action was answering the phone. By Friday, Apex's executive team was staring at me with expressions of profound astonishment. $90,000 in new contracts were already signed, exclusively from clients I had previously managed at Velocity. And this was merely the prelude. When I informed my new CEO, Alan, that I hadn't conducted any active sales outreach, he simply smiled. That's because their trust is in you, Elias, not in a corporate emblem. That trust is worth more than any $1 million marketing campaign. It dawned on me then how fundamentally flawed Velocity's philosophy had been. Diana saw my approach as a drain on resources. The reality was, I had constructed an asset they couldn't reproduce with standard scripts or CRM dashboards. Velocity hadn't just lost an employee. They had lost the sole anchor holding their customer base in place. That weekend, I relaxed on my balcony with a drink, my phone periodically buzzing with emails from people eager to discuss transferring their business now that I was with Apex. I didn't rush to reply. I simply watched the city lights, a profound sense of vindication washing over me. I wasn't recruiting. I didn't have to be. They were migrating to me because I had earned something Diana never comprehended: unwavering trust. It didn't take long for the inevitable news to circulate. Approximately 3 weeks after my dramatic exit, whispers began to ripple through the business network. Contracts were dissolving. Clients were actively seeking alternatives. The company was in a state of controlled panic. I wasn't surprised. Diana's idea of account management was brutally short calls and forced adherence to rigid procedures. It looked efficient on paper, but without the foundation of genuine relationship I laid, those accounts were balanced on a house of cards. One afternoon, Victor, the logistics client, called. He didn't even say hello. "Your old office is collapsing," he stated. They attempted to transition me to some junior associate who couldn't recall my account history. I told them I'd pay a competitor a premium just to avoid them. I chuckled. "You didn't happen to mention my name, did you?" "Of course I did," he replied. "I informed them you were the only reason I stayed. Without you, they're utterly lost." He wasn't the only source. Constance from a manufacturing firm told me Diana herself had attempted to win her back. "She called me twice," Constance recalled. "First, to assure me they were thriving, and then to suggest you had been manipulative." Constance actually laughed at the suggestion. If remembering my child's name is manipulation, then sign me up for more. It was almost pathetic. Diana was frantically grasping for control, but the harder she squeezed, the faster things disintegrated. I learned from a former colleague that she had been severely reprimanded in back-to-back leadership meetings. Clients were leaving faster than they could be on board. At one point, they lost 3 major contracts in a single week. 2 of those were accounts I had personally salvaged from the brink. But the real confirmation arrived when an internal memorandum was anonymously forwarded to me. 14 of their top 22 clients had either jumped to rival firms or officially announced they would not renew. 60 days. That's all it took for the numbers to crater. Diana couldn't formulate an explanation. She attempted to peddle a false narrative that I had poached clients. The undeniable truth was that I had not contacted a single one. I didn't need to. They had all witnessed how little Velocity valued them. Once I was gone, the inherent irony was overwhelming. Diana thought I was wasting time when I made simple inquiries about clients' pets or sent a brief note acknowledging a business milestone. But when those small human touches vanished, the clients noticed. That wasn't an efficiency. That was the bonding agent. I won't pretend I didn't feel a certain satisfaction hearing how swiftly everything was dissolving. It wasn't about revenge, precisely. It was pure, unadulterated validation. Proof that everything Diana had mocked me for was a single factor keeping their entire structure from collapsing. One evening, I received an email from a former coworker. "You won't believe this, but she's now blaming legacy operational flaws, meaning you, for the client exodus. No one is buying it." Of course, they weren't. Everyone now understood the reality. 2 months after I resigned, I received a call I never anticipated. It was a Tuesday, and I was outlining a long-term strategy for Apex when my phone displayed a familiar number I hadn't seen in months. Marcus Thorne, Velocity CEO. For a second, I almost let it ring out, but my curiosity got the best of me. Elias Vance. I answered, leaning back comfortably in my chair. Elias, it's Marcus, he said, his voice measured and tense, like walking on thin ice. I was hoping we could converse. Completely off the record. Certainly, I replied. What's on your mind? There was a significant pause. I'll be direct. Velocity is struggling. We are losing clients at an unsustainable rate. I believe we both understand the underlying cause. I offered no response. I didn't need to. I was curious, he continued, if Apex might consider some form of collaborative agreement, a joint acquisition of our most critical accounts, something to help stabilize both sides. I had to suppress a laugh. Marcus, Apex is performing exceptionally well independently. We have no need to purchase the clients you voluntarily lost. He sighed deeply. I could picture him running a hand over his face in that corner office where I had so often fruitlessly defended my methods. Then allow me to ask a different question, he said. What would it require to secure your return? Director of Client Operations. Full operational control, zero interference from Diana or anyone else. Name your price. For a brief time, I allowed the silence to linger. A small part of me savored the complete reversal of power. This was the same man who had once instructed me to trust Diana's process when I proposed change. Now, he sounded like a captain whose ship had just been impaled by an iceberg. I appreciate the generous offer, I finally stated, but I am where I belong. Apex understands the value I bring. I will not return to salvage the wreckage you permitted her to create. He didn't argue. He simply let out a long, heavy exhale. We should have listened to you sooner, he admitted quietly. Yes, I said. You should have. 2 weeks later, I learned from a contact that Diana had been separated during a company-wide strategic realignment. Translation, they finally realized she was actively destroying the business. I didn't gloat, but I would be dishonest if I said I didn't relish the news. After all, I didn't need to lift a single finger. Diana's own staggering arrogance did all the retaliatory work for me. That call from Marcus was more than just simple vindication. It was the moment I realized I had built something far exceeding a salary. I wasn't just working a job anymore. I was pioneering the future approach for the entire industry. And Velocity was reduced to watching it unfold from the sidelines. A year later, I am seated in my own corner office at Apex Group, overlooking the thriving landscape of downtown Austin. The title on my door reads Vice President of Client Strategy, and I hold a genuine equity stake in the firm, a position that would have been unimaginable during my tenure as a simple cog at Velocity Systems. The reality feels dreamlike. Our division has grown at an exponential rate. The personalized, relationship-first strategy one passionately championed wasn't just successful. It was completely surpassing every metric the industry had previously prioritized. Retention rates are higher than ever recorded. Referrals pour in without us spending a cent on traditional advertising. Clients remain loyal, not because we trap them with lengthy contracts, but because they genuinely want to. The most satisfying detail? Our competitors are scrambling to mimic our methods. I frequently see articles on professional networking sites about innovative client connection models, often authored by consultants who had dismissed my approach years ago. Every time I read one, I'm reminded of Diana standing in that conference room, labeling my methods as emotional labor and not aligned with client objectives. How the tables have turned. Velocity, conversely, never recovered. 6 months after my departure, the firm was acquired by a private equity group that consolidated operations through AI dashboards and rigid, automated workflows. The human touch was eradicated, replaced by sterile, templated communication. Most of Velocity's few remaining clients either immediately switched firms or were absorbed into the new, impersonal structure. I didn't celebrate their demise, but I felt a strong sense of poetic justice. As for Diana, she vanished from the upper echelons of the industry almost immediately. I heard through the network that she attempted to secure another leadership role, but became too toxic following the Velocity meltdown. The last I heard, she was freelancing as a compliance trainer for small, mid-tier firms, a significant come-down from the authority she once wielded. There was a unique irony to it all. She had dedicated so much energy to erasing the intrinsic value of my work, and now, the very principles she ridiculed had become the gold standard. Even Apex's CEO admitted it during a board review. What you have constructed here is not just a strategic framework, Elias, Allen said. It is a fundamental culture shift, and everyone else is playing catch-up. That assessment resonated deeply with me. For all the years I was told to stick to the script, or stay transactional, I finally proved that clients refuse to be just another number in a spreadsheet. They need to feel seen, heard, and remembered. That is the engine of loyalty. That is what transformed a shaky startup like Apex into a major market force. One night, as I prepared to leave the office, I reflected on the moment Diana deleted my files. The sharp click of her mouse echoed like a starting pistol in my memory. She genuinely thought she was destroying me that day. What she actually accomplished was granting me the freedom to construct something infinitely larger and more enduring. I never sought vengeance. I didn't need litigation, a fiery social media post, or a public confrontation. All I needed was time. Time for Diana's own self-regard to perform exactly as I knew it would. Consume her from the inside out. Now, every meeting I attend is conducted entirely on my terms. The clients across the table are not merely accounts. They are individuals I respect, and they trust me because I have consistently earned that trust. My division at Apex does not operate on scripts or fear. We operate on authentic connection, and it is overwhelmingly effective. I think back to the day she deleted my data, how convinced she was that she had executed a masterful power play. She believed erasing those records would validate her philosophy that my methods were useless. Instead, all she proved was how completely irreplaceable those human connections truly were. When I left, the clients did not remain with Velocity. They followed the individual who remembered what made them feel valued. That was not an accident. That was the entire strategy. Occasionally, I still hear her name mentioned. A colleague might casually note that Diana is now doing contract compliance training, drifting between smaller firms unaware of her devastating track record. I don't smile when I hear it, but I harbor zero pity for her. She engineered that downfall herself. People sometimes ask if I ever considered evening the score, perhaps publicly sharing my side of the story or calling her out for her actions. But what would that achieve? Velocity is now a forgotten entity. Diana's name is a mere footnote, while the relationship-first approach she mocked is becoming the industry's central case study for building enduring client partnerships. My success is the only statement I will ever need to make. The truth is, the greatest revenge is not revenge at all. It is flourishing in the precise manner someone told you that you could not. It is walking away from a burning structure and simply observing its collapse, knowing you never had to lift a finger to hasten its demise. I extracted a profound lesson from the experience. You don't need to fight fire with fire. Sometimes the wiser strategy is to allow someone's own toxic ego to do all the arduous work. Diana thought I was inefficient, wasting time, and failing to grasp the big picture. It turned out she was the one who was hopelessly lost. Now, every morning I come to work, I am reminded of how wrong she was. Not in a petty way, but in the quiet, profound satisfaction that comes from knowing I built something authentic, something that will last. And honestly, that is the only kind of validation I will ever require.